talk about 4 things, I think. And what I will do is I'll talk a little bit, and then Valéry Giroux, my friend, who is very familiar with my work, will paraphrase it for you. And then what I hope we can do is have a question and answer session. And so that's what I want to do. Now, the things I would like to talk about are these. I want to talk about what abolition means, and how it's distinguished from other ways of thinking about the human-non-human relationship. Then I want to talk about something called new welfarism. Then I want to address a little bit about the animal rights organizations. I have been doing this work for 26 years now. I started off being part of a core group of people who formed an organization called People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Obviously, I don't have anything to do with PETA any longer. And I want to talk a little bit about my concerns about a lot of the national, or these large organizations, because I think they are problematic. There was a 4th thing I wanted to talk about that now escapes my mind.
Because I'm going to forget.
Okay. Why don't you talk about those 3 things, and then eventually my brain will figure out what the 4th one is. All right, go ahead.
Je sais pas à quel point vous comprenez l'anglais. Pas trop. Je vais essayer de faire de mon mieux, mais je vais sûrement oublier un paquet de choses. Ceux qui comprennent l'anglais, s'il vous plaît, aidez-moi, d'accord? Donc, vous remerciez d'être là, il a adoré la bouffe, c'était formidable. Ensuite, il s'excusait de ne pas parler français et vous informait que vous étiez déjà chanceux qui parle anglais, parce qu'aux États-Unis, c'est pas évident de parler quoi que ce soit. Ensuite, j'espère aborder 4 points. Le premier étant la position abolitionniste, ce qu'elle signifie. Le deuxième, il compte parler du welfarisme, de la position en faveur du bien-être animal. Puis, en 3e lieu, des organisations qui s'intéressent au bien-être animal généralement. Excusez-moi. Et puis, il terminait en disant qu'il a commencé à s'intéresser à la question animale en étant associé au groupe PETA, auquel il n'est plus du tout associé maintenant, évidemment. Puis, on était à chercher quel était le 4e point duquel il voulait parler.
Okay. I use abolition. When I talk about abolition, I'm talking about actually what I used to call, in the 1990s, animal rights, as opposed to animal welfare. The reason why I really don't use animal rights anymore is because that has become a meaningless concept. Animal rights means everything. And it is used, it's been appropriated by the large organizations to refer to basically anything, any program or any piece of legislation or anything that has to do with animals. And so I think that it creates confusion. And as far as the media is concerned, they bought that. The media has bought the fact that they use the expression animal rights to describe any sort of welfarist measure. So therefore, the campaign against foie gras, for example, is regarded as an animal rights campaign. I don't see that at all as an animal rights campaign. So I use abolitionist to distinguish the way I used to use animal rights 10 or 15 years ago, but can't really anymore because it's not communicative.
Donc, il y a 10 ou 15 ans, quand Gary a commencé à s'intéresser à la question, il parlait du droit des animaux, puis il a délaissé, il préfère maintenant parler d'abolitionnisme afin de distinguer sa position de celle qui en fait, parce que le concept de droit des animaux a été un peu approprié, a été transformé par les médias et par les gens qui parlent de droit animal, peu importe, en fait, pour parler d'une loi qui concerne en fait le bien-être animal. Donc, pour être plus clair, je préfère employer le concept d'abolitionnisme et se qualifier d'abolitionniste plutôt que animal rights, de défenseur des droits des animaux.
Sorry. All right, so abolition, the theory of abolition is basically that, I'm sorry, thank you very much, Nick. The theory of abolition says that we have no moral justification for using any animals whatsoever. So that it doesn't matter how we treat them or how well we treat them, or it's not a question of how we treat them. It's a matter of the morality of animal use. So obviously, it's better to inflict less harm than more harm. But that doesn't mean it's acceptable to inflict any harm. I mean, obviously, if you're going to murder somebody, it's better to murder the person without torturing the person. But it doesn't make it good to murder the person just because you don't torture the person. So, but the theory of abolition says that there is no moral justification for using non-humans. And it is in distinction to the theory of animal welfare, which says that we may use animals if we treat them in particular ways, if we give proper moral consideration to their interests and we treat them humanely, or we do not inflict unnecessary suffering on them, then our use of them is okay.
Les abolitionnistes considèrent que toute utilisation d'un animal n'est pas justifiée, peu importe la manière selon laquelle on traite les animaux, que ce soit d'une manière humaine ou humanitaire, ça ne justifie pas l'utilisation en tant que telle d'un animal. Bien sûr, ça ne veut pas dire que, bien entendu, torturer un animal ou torturer une personne humaine, c'est pire que ça ajoute un mal, c'est-à-dire que c'est toujours pire plus de mal, plus de tort causé, c'est pire qu'un peu moins, mais ça ne fait pas en sorte qu'en causer moins, c'est correct ou c'est moralement acceptable. Si on tue quelqu'un et qu'on le torture, c'est mieux de le tuer sans le torturer peut-être, mais ça ne fait pas en sorte que c'est correct de le faire. Alors que l'approche en faveur du bien-être animal s'intéresse exclusivement à la manière selon laquelle on va utiliser les animaux et ne remet pas nécessairement en question le fait même de les utiliser. C'est la distinction principale.
That was very good. All right. And the theory of abolition says we should abolish all animal use, and we ought to put our efforts into abolishing animal use and not regulating animal exploitation. Because remember something, would you be able to translate zero-sum game? Okay. I mean, basically, we live in a world, I can probably do without that. We live in a world of limited resources. Okay? We've all got limited time, limited money, all right? Limited resources. Every minute we spend, I mean, we have choices to make. It's not that we can do everything. We can't do everything. And so we have to make choices about what our activism is going to be. And I argue that we ought to put our efforts into activism that is directed towards abolition of animal exploitation, not regulation of animal exploitation. So, in my judgment, we're not really doing any good by promoting this welfarist regulation, and I'll tell you why. Regulation of animal exploitation does nothing to increase production costs of exploitation. You don't have a chart for me. Do you have any sort of thing I can write on?
I can check upstairs.
Okay. I could do some economic graphs for you. But animal exploitation, we intuitively think that if you regulate animal exploitation, it will make production costs go up. It will make supply go down. It will make demand go down. And therefore, it will make the quantity of animals who are being exploited be reduced. But it doesn't work that way. It never has. It never has. Generally, animal welfare reform decreases production costs. It makes it better for the producers. It makes it cheaper for the producers to produce animal products. So, for example, the gestation crate campaign, or actually, I guess a better example would be the veal crate campaign in Europe, where there is a movement to eliminate over a period of time the veal crate. That is not making veal more expensive. It's actually reducing the production cost of veal, because calves kept in these little chutes get stressed out, they get ill, they get sick, they need to be medicated, that costs money, that increases production cost. If you take the veal calves out of these little pens and stick them into a little unit, it actually reduces production costs, and it actually increases. The studies show that there is an increased demand for veal, not a decreased demand for veal. That story, that basic story, can be told about every sort of regulation of animal exploitation. It's the same. It's always production costs go down, demand goes up. Because production costs go down, these often get passed along to the consumer, and what gets passed along to the consumer is also this message: it's okay to eat this stuff because it's humane.
Ok, faire mon possible. Dans notre activisme, c'est sûr qu'on a on est limité dans le temps et dans les ressources qu'on peut attribuer ou investir. Et donc, il faut choisir nécessairement. On ne peut pas tout faire en partant. Mais de toute façon, dans les campagnes de type qui visent à réglementer ou les réformes plus ciblées qui vont viser à améliorer le sort des animaux qui sont exploités, ne fonctionnent jamais. Parce qu'on a l'impression qu'elle pourrait viser à augmenter les coûts de production et donc éventuellement à diminuer l'offre et diminuer la demande pour les produits animaux. Mais c'est tout le contraire qui arrive en fait, puis ça se vérifie dans chacune des campagnes de type réformiste. Il donnait l'exemple de la campagne des cajots pour les veaux. Je ne sais pas si c'est comme ça que vous le... Les endroits où sont...
Des box, ouais. Des box.
Ah, les box, ok. Oui, les enclos pour les veaux, c'est ça. Oui. Eh bien, c'est ça. La campagne donc, qui vise à se débarrasser éventuellement de ces enclos-là ne fonctionne pas parce qu'en fait, en privilégiant une forme alternative d'élevage, les coûts de production sont en fait réduits parce que la production comme ça, dans ces enclos-là, entraîne un paquet de maladies pour les animaux, va entraîner les animaux vont être blessés, il va y avoir il y a beaucoup de pertes en fait financières pour les exploitants. Puis, en bout de ligne, finalement, ça va passer à une méthode qui fait en sorte qu'il y a moins de pertes et moins de coûts associés à la production. Finalement, fait juste se transformer en une offre qui est plus facile, puis à procurer. Et puis, malgré ça, les producteurs vont souvent se sentir justifiés d'augmenter le prix des produits, qui vont refiler donc la facture au consommateur, tout en faisant pourtant un profit plus grand. Puis le consommateur lui-même va se sentir va être prêt à payer ce prix-là parce qu'on lui dit que de cette manière, il agit moralement correctement. Il va être donc encouragé en étant rassuré que les animaux sont élevés de manière humaine. Il va être encouragé à consommer l'animal, donc on envoie un message qui est complètement contraire à celui qu'on veut envoyer quand on est en faveur de l'abolition de l'utilisation des animaux pour nos propres fins.
All right. And now the theory of abolition doesn't say that we should let all the animals out and let them run free and whatnot. What it says is that we ought to take care of the animals that we brought into existence until they die. And we ought to take as good care of them as we can. But we ought not to be bringing any more domestic animals into existence. This is the problem. It's not a question of whether we can treat them humanely. We ought not to be using them at all. We ought not to have any domestic animals. I mean, and so we ought to stop bringing domestic animals into existence. And I mean by that also companion animals, dogs and cats. We have 4 dogs, 4 rescue dogs. We had 7, and 3 died last year. But they're all, we regard them as like refugees that would be dead if we did not take them in. And I can honestly tell you, I don't think there's anybody in the world who loves dogs more than I do. And if there were 2 left on the planet and it were up to me to whether or not they were able to reproduce so that we could continue to own dogs, the answer would be absolutely not. We ought to stop producing domestic animals. The only animals that should exist on the planet, wild animals. And we ought to leave them alone, basically. We ought to stop encroaching on their habitats and leave them alone and let them live their lives. Human animals should live human animals should live with human animals. Non-human animals should live with non-human animals. We have our society, they have their society. We should leave them alone. We should stop bringing them into our world. They don't belong in our world. And that's what the theory of abolition says as a theoretical matter. The practical way we achieve that is by promoting veganism. Veganism is the most important single form of social activism a human being can engage in who cares about this issue. I mean, obviously there are other things about when I want to talk about the relationship between abolition and other social movements, but the most important thing that we can do is to be vegan. Veganism is not a diet, as you people probably all know. And it's not a lifestyle. It's a political commitment to nonviolence. It is an extremely important commitment to nonviolence. You know, I grew up in the 1960s during the era of Vietnam, the Vietnam War, and you know, nonviolence in many ways. I mean, it was important to us because we didn't want to get drafted and shipped off to Vietnam and forced to kill people we didn't even know. But I don't think any of us, I certainly didn't back then ever think about, violence as to what I put in my mouth or what I wore or what I used on my body or, what I otherwise consumed. And really, if you believe in nonviolence, I hope we all do, then the cornerstone of nonviolence, the foundational building brick of nonviolence is veganism. And we have a movement, an animal movement that's busy telling everybody, oh, it's so terribly hard to become a vegan, and if you become a vegan, you're hanging on the cross for the animals, you're a martyr for the animals. And I think we've got to stop that. And we've got to make it clear to people, being a vegan is easy. It's extremely easy. And it's crucial, it's essential. We need to build a vegan movement. We don't have a movement yet. We talk about the animal rights movement, and excuse me for saying this, I think that is bullshit. We don't have a political movement. I mean, we have charities, we have big organizations that have millions of dollars, and they're charities, they're bourgeois charities. They have nothing, they're not political. They have nothing to do with political ideas. We need to build a political movement. We don't have one yet. And veganism has to be its foundation.
Je commence par dire que le mouvement abolitionniste s'oppose à la domestication, évidemment, ce qui ne veut pas dire de laisser les animaux, de libérer les animaux qui sont domestiqués déjà ou de les laisser évidemment courir librement dans la nature parce qu'ils sont plus autonomes et ils ont besoin, ces animaux-là, qu'on prenne le mieux soin possible. Quand je dis animaux, j'entends animaux non humains, évidemment. Ils ont besoin qu'on en prenne soin dans leur meilleur intérêt autant que possible. Mais ça veut dire nécessairement, par contre, mettre fin à cette institution qui est la domestication des animaux en arrêtant évidemment l'élevage. Et ça va jusqu'à aussi rejeter l'institution des animaux de compagnie. Quelqu'un mentionnait qu'ils ont 4 chiens à la maison, ils en avaient 7 en fait. Sa partenaire et lui jusqu'à tout récemment. Ce sont des chiens qu'ils ont adoptés de foyers, ce sont des chiens souvent qui avaient des problèmes de santé ou qui sont vieux quand ils vont les recueillir dans les sociétés de SPA. Oui, les refuges, c'est ça. Pour essayer de leur procurer, éviter qu'ils soient tués, mais que même s'il il adore évidemment les chiens, ces chiens en particulier, mais tous les chiens et tous les animaux de compagnie. et tous les animaux non humains, mais que même s'il devait ne rester que 2 chiens sur la planète et s'il avait le choix de faire en sorte qu'ils se reproduisent, il ne voudrait absolument pas, compte tenu du fait que l'institution de la domestication est quelque chose de complètement immoral du point de vue abolitionniste, c'est une interférence dans la nature extrêmement grave, et que l'idée... je me souviens de ce que c'est dans le fait. Et que c'est pas du tout le message qui est envoyé par les welfaristes. Est-ce qu'on a après ça, est-ce qu'il y a enchaîné comment, non?
Ouais,
les humains doivent vivre entre eux, les animaux sauvages doivent rester entre eux.
Précisément, donc ils ne sont pas du tout adaptés pour la société, pour être dans une société humaine en fait, puis c'est de chercher à nous vivre entre eux-mêmes et avoir le moins possible, à interférer le moins possible dans leur société, dans les sociétés non humaines. On cause jamais de bien en faisant ça, mais il parlait aussi du mouvement welfariste à ce moment-là. Oui, donc il a fait le lien avec le véganisme, c'est là que je me souviens plus de...
Il fallait créer un mouvement végan
que
un mouvement politique,
ça devienne un mouvement
qui à la base soit végan, et que le végétalisme c'est pas uniquement un mode de vie ou une alimentation, c'est aussi un
geste politique. Voilà, qui n'est pas du tout, c'est un message qui n'est pas du tout, un message politique, donc qui n'est pas du tout envoyé par le mouvement welfariste et qui tend à nous dire qu'être végan, c'est difficile, c'est très compliqué et qu'on est des martyrs pour la protection des animaux quand on décide d'adopter une diète, un mode de vie végétalien, mais en fait plus que ça, végan. Alors que dans le fond, au contraire, il faut encourager, il faut voir que c'est facile dès qu'on est convaincu par l'idée.
Et que les bases doivent être c'est pour sa santé ou pour l'environnement, c'est pas trop l'idée.
La non-violence.
Oui, la non-violence.
C'est ça qui est le plus important.
À la base, en fait, je me souviens plus précisément, you talked for too long, I couldn't remember the things. But à la base, c'est sûr que du point de vue de Gary, c'est l'abolition, c'est quelque chose qui s'inscrit dans un mouvement beaucoup plus large pour la paix, pour la non-violence, puis que de ne pas interférer justement dans les sociétés non humaines, c'est précisément par respect. Est-ce que vous vous souvenez d'autre chose?
Il parlait aussi de la guerre de Vietnam, comme quoi les gens ne voulaient pas justement chez les gens qui connaissaient.
Que quand il a grandi, c'était avant la guerre et qu'il y avait une idée de ce qu'était la violence. Ah oui, de ce qu'était la domination et la violence quand on envoyait les soldats tuer des gens qu'ils ne connaissaient même pas, mais il n'avait pas réalisé à l'époque que dans le fond, la violence, c'est chaque fois qu'on met quelque chose dans notre bouche qu'on peut choisir d'adhérer d'avoir un comportement violent ou pas. Donc, ça devient très politiquement requis d'adhérer au véganisme. C'est la chose la plus importante à faire quand on s'oppose à la violence, en fait. C'est la première chose à faire.
Il faut que ça devienne un mouvement politique parce que, en fait, c'est pas un mouvement politique.
Oui, présentement, effectivement, avec il n'y a pas présentement de mouvement politique qui est en... She said that there was no political movement. Because that's what you end with, I think.
Yes, I've been having an interesting debate with a fellow from France named David Olivier on l'abolition des viandes. I have come to the conclusion, David does not like me very much, but, and that's okay.
He doesn't like anybody.
Well, I can tell you, some of the things he has said to me, are such that it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that I was going to be assassinated when I came to Paris. But he obviously does not, he really strongly does not like what I say. Because I told him I don't think l'abolition des viandes is a political movement. I think it's nonsense. Because it just makes this distinction between flesh and other products. And you know, and his friend, is it Antoine Comiti or whatever, and he jumps in and he says, yes, but you know, we can't live a perfect life. And I said, well, Yes, I know we can't live a perfect life, but that doesn't mean we don't have certain things within our control. So yes, I agree. You know, none of us can ever escape animal exploitation completely because there are probably animal products in the stuff on this floor. Okay, but you know, I can't control what's on the floor. You can't control what's on the floor. But I can control what I stick in my mouth. I can control what I wear on my body. I can control what I use on my body. And the things that are within my control, I can control. I can't deal with everything.
Donc c'est ça, sur certains forums, il y a eu l'occasion de parler de la campagne en faveur de l'abolition de la consommation de viande. Je crois que vous avez ici, avec David Olivier et certains autres qui défendaient...
And I'm East Pignataro. She doesn't like me.
Les gens qui n'aiment pas trop donc, les idées de Gary et qui veulent encourager la fin de la consommation de la viande. Selon Gary, c'est pas une bonne idée du tout parce que ça envoie le message très confondant qu'il y a une distinction morale entre la consommation de viande et les autres produits animaux. Ça a toujours des effets pervers d'insister sur un aspect d'exploitation parce que ça confond les gens, ça laisse croire en fait qu'il y a une différence. On pointe une chose mais sans pointer les autres, ça participe pas du tout avec le message. Bien sûr, on ne peut pas mener, à l'occasion de ces forums-là, quelqu'un disait qu'on ne peut pas mener des vies parfaitement éthiques, c'est bien entendu. On ne peut pas éviter l'exploitation animale, c'est sûr, il y a probablement des produits animaux utilisés pour la confection du sol, dans tous les matériaux qui nous entourent, mais il y a quand même certaines choses, ça ne justifie pas moralement de manger des produits des animaux. On a du contrôle sur quand même une partie considérable de ce qu'on fait, comme ce qu'on porte, les produits qu'on utilise pour les cosmétiques, les produits domestiques, et donc pour toutes les choses qui tombent sous notre contrôle, les actions que l'on fait, eh bien, on doit absolument éviter à ce moment-là l'utilisation de quelque produit animal que ce soit.
So that's basic. Those are my sort of introductory thoughts about abolitionism. And the thing to really have in your mind is the relationship between abolition and veganism. Veganism is the principle of abolition applied to your own life. I mean, that's, to me, I think is sort of a key idea that veganism represents a sort of a political act. It is a political act because it's rejecting the most significant form of institutional exploitation that exists on our planet, basically. And it's a political act, but it's also applying the abolitionist principle to your own life. And it is not an insignificant thing. It is the most important, to my way of thinking, the most important form of political activism. And this is actually where I disagree with Olivier. I mean, I disagree with Olivier in many respects. But one of the real significant differences that Mr. Olivier and I have is that he thinks that if you're out talking about not exploiting animals, it doesn't really matter whether you're a vegan. Now, it's not clear to me why, if you're not a vegan, well, I don't know what you're doing talking about, I don't know what you're talking to people about if you're not a vegan and you're talking about animal exploitation, which was not a question he ever really gave me an answer, let alone a coherent answer to. But I think, to my way of thinking, if someone's a vegan, and a consistent vegan all the time, I would like that person to be doing other things as well, but I'm happy that person's a vegan. That's what we need. We need a political movement of people who will support abolition. That's never going to happen as long as we do not have a core number of vegans. And I suggest to you that if you, I don't know what the budget is in France for animal groups. I can tell you in the United States, I would guess in the 25, 26 years I've been doing this, we have probably spent in the billions of dollars on animal welfare reform campaigns. If you took that money and put it into vegan education, we would have right now in the United States hundreds of thousands of vegans. That would be the beginning of a political movement that might actually be able to do something to shift the paradigm away from the property status of animals. Animals are nothing but things. They're like chairs, your shoes, anything other things. They have nothing but economic value. Okay.
lien
Okay.
entre le lien qui est important entre donc l'abolitionnisme et le véganisme, c'est fondamental. Le véganisme, c'est le principe en fait fondamental de l'abolitionnisme. C'est l'application en fait d'une position politique à sa propre vie. C'est le commencement, donc c'est le premier pas en fait, avoir une position politique en faveur de la fin de l'exploitation de la plus importante institution d'exploitation. En fait, pour avoir cette position-là, il faut nécessairement l'appliquer à soi. Gary se demandait comment certains peuvent dire que si on éduque, les gens parlent de la défense des animaux sans être soi-même végan. Ils se demandent même de quoi parlent ces gens-là, de quoi ils parlent, puisque c'est vraiment la première chose à faire. Ensuite... Ah oui, c'est ça, les milliards de dollars qui sont dépensés parce que, en fait, aux États-Unis, j'imagine que ça doit être un peu la même chose ici, mais il y a des organismes welfaristes qui sont ils ont des budgets super importants, puis depuis quand même déjà plusieurs années, puis on n'arrive à rien, il y a plus d'exploitation maintenant que jamais. Et Gary est convaincu que si on avait davantage utilisé notre énergie pour devenir soi-même végan et faire de l'éducation à propos du véganisme, on aurait au moins le commencement d'un mouvement politique réel. On aurait beaucoup plus de gens qui seraient devenus véritablement végans et pourraient en faire la promotion de manière plus sérieuse, alors que là, on arrête au welfarisme, au végétarisme, bien avant d'atteindre le véganisme.
Now let me go on, and then we can come back and talk about this stuff, and you can ask whatever questions you want to ask, but we can talk about it. The next thing I want to talk about, which I've already alluded to, is this whole concept of new welfarism. What new welfarism is, you know, when I started off in the movement in 1982, we were talking about animal rights. There were animal welfare organizations. We were talking about animal rights, and what we were meaning when we talked about animal rights is that we shouldn't use animals. But when we sat down to try to come up with a practical strategy for how we were going to achieve abolition, the consensus was, and I was sort of outside, I was always the one disagreeing about this, was the way we would get to abolition would be to support welfare reform. And so you have what I call this phenomenon of new welfarism, because classical welfarism says it's okay to use animals as long as we treat them okay. New welfarism says, well, we really ought not to use them, but we're going to continue to do so for the foreseeable future. So what we ought to do is we ought to support welfare reform, because welfare reform will lead incrementally, step by step by step by step by step, will lead to abolition. And for the reasons I've just talked about, that doesn't work. I mean, first of all, there are, well, why don't you go ahead and describe that?
Oui, au début des années 80, donc quand on s'intéressait aux droits des animaux, bien entendu, on voulait la fin de l'exploitation. Mais on pensait que, en fait, le groupe avec lequel Gary discutait de ces choses-là pensait qu'il fallait y aller de manière étapiste, y aller étape par étape. Bon, Gary n'était pas d'accord, était toujours celui qui était en désaccord avec ce type d'idée-là, mais il identifie maintenant, en fait, les welfaristes, qui sont les personnes qui s'intéressent au bien-être animal, mais qui ne se préoccupent carrément pas de l'utilisation en tant que telle. Mais il identifie aussi l'autre groupe qui est en fait très important aussi, qui s'appelle les néo-welfaristes, qui sont les gens qui pensent que, oui, évidemment, ce serait mieux qu'on n'exploite plus les animaux du tout, mais que pour arriver à cette fin ultime-là, il faut y aller par étapes, et donc, et non pas parler nécessairement de l'abolition en tant que telle, mais à donner justement des réformes, à essayer d'y aller tranquillement. C'est avec quoi, pour les raisons dont tu parlais tantôt, ce qui ne fonctionne pas du tout, en fait, ce qui mène au contraire à une augmentation de l'exploitation animale.
The chunks I'm giving you are too long.
Yeah, shorter you can, it's better. It would be better for each sentence, but
okay.
Do what you can.
From New York, we talked today. Okay. All right. Now, the problem with new welfarism, there are two problems with new welfarism. theoretical and practical. The theoretical problem with welfarism is if you think it's wrong to exploit animals, then you shouldn't be encouraging people to say, that you shouldn't be saying something different from what you really believe and promoting campaigns that represent exploitation as more humane. I mean, think about it in the human context, for example. If you're opposed to rape, which I hope you all are, but if you're opposed to rape, the idea that we say, well, some rapes are worse than others, which they are, some are more violent than others. Let's campaign against violence. Let's campaign for more humane rapes. Let's campaign to make sure that rapists sort of really try to consider seriously the interests of their victims. I mean, I think that's insane. But yet, when it comes to animals, we don't have any problem. Because we're species, basically, we don't have any problem sort of saying, well, let's just exploit animals more humanely, which is really no different from saying let's just rape people more. Let's just be nicer when we do it. Come on, let's just. And so there's a theoretical problem with it. The practical problem with it is it doesn't work. I mean, for the reasons I was just talking about a few minutes ago. Go ahead.
Maybe just the
Go ahead.
Le mouvement néo-welfariste, en fait, est problématique à deux niveaux, au niveau théorique et au niveau pratique. Au niveau théorique, d'abord, c'est au plan logique, au plan de l'honnêteté, c'est pas correct d'encourager une réforme qui vise, par exemple, à rendre le traitement plus humanitaire. Quand, en fait, on vise l'abolition, c'est un message qui est en contradiction avec ce qu'on veut vraiment, qui est malhonnête, puis qui correspond aussi à Gary donnait l'exemple du viol. Bon, évidemment, on est tous d'accord, on s'entend tous pour dire qu'il y a des viols qui sont plus violents que d'autres. Il y en a qui sont donc pires que d'autres, mais on est quand même pas en train de faire des campagnes faisant la promotion des viols moins violents. Soyons plus gentils lorsqu'on viole, en laissant entendre que c'est bien correct de le faire. Ça serait complètement absurde. Ça nous semble évident qu'il ne faut pas faire ça quand les humains sont concernés, mais en raison de notre spécisme, on est porté à croire que pour les non-humains, ça va.
The practical problem is that animal welfare doesn't work for the reasons I was just talking about a few minutes ago. I mean, it's not that animal welfare is moving us closer to abolition by decreasing demand and decreasing output of animals. In fact, I mean, I'm working now, I'm starting to work with an economist, a woman who is a professor of economics, and we're working on some ideas and some things we're going to be doing. But right before I left, she sent me some data that show that world animal consumption of the world consumption of animal protein is going up dramatically. It's not coming down. Animal welfare is not working. And what it is doing is making people feel better about animal exploitation. So in fact, it might actually be increasing net suffering by encouraging people to consume animals.
Donc, même à la limite, si encore ça fonctionnait, c'est théoriquement inacceptable, mais si ça fonctionnait au plan pratique, mais c'est certainement pas le cas, c'est tout l'inverse. En fait, ça encourage plutôt les gens à consommer davantage. Gary explique qu'il commence à travailler avec un professeur en économie, puis c'est bien évident que les données, en fait, les faits connus nous font comprendre que la demande en protéines animales mondiale ne fait qu'augmenter, alors qu'un mouvement welfariste qui est quand même assez important depuis déjà 200 ans, s'intéresse à la protection des animaux. On voit qu'au contraire, il y a plus d'exploitation que jamais. Ça ne fonctionne pas du tout.
That sounds right.
Voilà, donc pour des raisons pratiques.
So theoretically it doesn't work, practically it doesn't work. Animal welfare isn't helping. By the way, I want to say something about why we have animal welfare. Where the hell did it come from? Because that's an interesting historical question, which I was talking about at the presentation at the university on Monday. Animal welfare is based on the idea that animals are able to suffer, but animals don't have an interest in their lives. So it's all right, they don't care whether we use them, they only care how we use them. when you translate, I want you to put that emphasis in whether and not. That they don't care whether we use them, they care how we use them. That's an idea that goes back a couple hundred years ago, when the animal welfare movement developed first in Britain and then came over to the continent, was this idea that animals have minds that are different from ours, which they do. We have language. We use symbolic communication. All of our concepts are connected to language. I don't know what it would be like to think in concepts that didn't involve language. But I have no doubt that animals have some sort of equivalence of concepts. It's absolutely clear you can't explain their behavior without some equivalent of concepts. But the animal welfare theory is based on this notion that animals don't care that we use them, but only how we use them. And it's not that it's it is an old idea. It sort of emerged in our thinking, in Western thinking, about 200 years ago. But that's Peter Singer's view. I mean, for example, that's Peter Singer's philosophy in a nutshell. Peter Singer basically says animals don't have an interest in their life. The great apes might. Francione, right? The great apes might. And some dolphins might. But basically, he doesn't think most animals have an interest in their life. So it's a question of, let's reduce their suffering and let's take their suffering to it. But he doesn't think killing, per se, is a problem.
L'origine du welfarisme, si on veut, ça remonte peut-être à déjà 200 ans, les premières lois de protection des animaux. Ça parle quand même de la reconnaissance de la sensibilité ou de la sentience. Là, on a un problème de traduction ici, là, mais du fait qu'on reconnaît que les animaux peuvent souffrir et que c'est important de ne pas les faire souffrir. Mais c'est pourquoi on est welfariste, c'est parce qu'on reconnaît donc la capacité de souffrir, mais on ne reconnaît pas l'importance, l'intérêt à vivre des animaux, à persévérer dans leur être. Donc on considère que c'est pas correct de les faire souffrir, mais c'est correct de les tuer, en fait, si c'est de manière, c'est avec le moins de souffrance possible, disons. C'est en fait la pensée de Peter, oui?
En fait, le problème de base, c'est que on ne se soucie pas du fait de les utiliser, mais surtout de comment.
C'est ça.
Oui, c'est ça, nous amène le bien-être animal, c'est comment on
la
les
manière
utilise,
sur laquelle on les
pas
utilise.
le fait de les utiliser tout court. C'est ça qui pose problème.
Oui, c'est vrai.
Donc oui, là il est relié sur Peter Singer qui se base là-dessus et qui met de côté le fait de... Enfin, qui dit que les animaux ont une façon de ressentir différente de la nôtre et que donc il faut faire attention à comment les utiliser, mais il ne remet pas en question le fait de les utiliser.
Basé sur l'idée, à partir de l'idée que les animaux ont un esprit complètement différent du nôtre et certains vont tirer la conclusion qu'ils n'ont pas d'intérêt à vivre. Gary dit bien sûr, il y a des différences entre les non-humains et les humains ont des particularités, bien entendu. Nos concepts sont influencés par le fait qu'on possède un langage symbolique, alors que bon, les animaux qui n'auraient pas un langage identique, leur concept, parce que c'est certain qu'ils ont quand même des formes de concepts, sinon on ne peut pas expliquer leur comportement, mais certainement associés à d'autres types de représentations. C'est difficile de savoir, mais ça ne signifie pas du tout, on ne peut pas tirer la conclusion qu'ils n'ont pas d'intérêt à vivre. Or, c'est c'est la base, en fait, de la différence, de la pensée de Peter Singer, qui va s'intéresser au fait qu'ils souffrent, mais qui ne va pas leur attribuer une capacité à avoir une perception d'eux qui fait en sorte qu'ils auraient un intérêt à vivre.
I mean, one of the things I argue, and one of my main, I mean, I have many differences in terms of my views and Peter Singer's views, but I think Peter is wrong to say that animals don't have an interest in life. I think anything that is sentient, and that doesn't require, I mean, basically, if you are the sort of being who has subjective awareness, i.e. you have sensations, you're aware of, you're perceptually aware. I think you are self-aware. Because Singer thinks you don't have an interest in life if you're not self-aware, by which he means you have to be able to look into a mirror and say, oh, that's me. Well, I mean, yes, I agree, dogs don't do that, but to say that dogs aren't self-aware is bizarre in my view. Or cats, or fish, or, I mean, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're sentient, you are self-aware, and you have an interest in life, because sentience is a means to the end of survival. I mean, to say that something is sentient, to say that X is sentient, but X doesn't have an interest in life, strikes me as being absolutely bizarre. Sentience isn't an end in itself. It is a means to the end of continued survival. And the reason, I mean, you know, sentience is a characteristic that certain organisms, don't you dare kill all that cake, because I'm going to get some more of that later on. I want to tell you now, I'm not violent, but you eat all that cake, we're going to have trouble. Big trouble, kiddo. That sentience is not an end in itself, but it is a means to the end of survival. So to say that something is some being is sentient, but is not interested in continued existence, I think is, as a concept, it is logically problematic.
Tous les êtres sensibles nécessairement ont un intérêt à vivre, puisque, bon, Peter Singer va dire que pour avoir un intérêt à vivre, à continuer à vivre, pour avoir un intérêt à vivre, il faut être conscient de soi. Puis ça, évidemment, c'est un concept qui considère que, bon, que les animaux non humains, que plusieurs animaux non humains n'ont pas. Et il va croire que les chimpanzés, par exemple, les grands singes ou les dauphins, certains non humains, ont une conscience de soi, mais que les autres non, donc ils n'ont pas d'intérêt à vivre. Mais Gary, ce qui veut dire que c'est impensable de comprendre la sensibilité sans avoir une certaine conscience de soi de toute façon, parce que les êtres qui sont sensibles doivent nécessairement faire la différence entre ce qui est leur sensation et la sensation des autres. Ils vont quand même avoir une idée que c'est leur personne qui ressent ce qu'ils ressentent. Donc ça va... je ne sais pas, c'est clair, hein? C'est que, des sourcils foncés, mais c'est que nécessairement ils doivent distinguer, quand une sensation leur arrive, ils doivent avoir une impression, ils doivent savoir que c'est la leur. S'ils souffrent, s'ils sont blessés, s'ils ressentent une douleur, nécessairement ils font la distinction entre la douleur qu'éprouve un autre et la leur. Donc ils ont un sens d'eux-mêmes nécessairement. Donc à partir de ça, on peut dire qu'il y a une conscience de soi qui est de base, qui est nécessairement là, et qui explique pourquoi tous les êtres sensibles ont nécessairement un intérêt à se perpétuer dans leur être, et que la sensibilité, de toute façon, c'est pas une fin en soi, c'est au plan évolutif, elle sert à la survie. Donc c'est un petit peu étrange de penser qu'un être pourrait être sensible, mais ne pas avoir d'intérêt à vivre, alors que sa sensibilité même est au service de sa survie. Ne mange pas le gâteau, j'en veux encore.
Okay. Natalie said we have to be out by 10, right? These are that we have to be out by these are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to sort of finish up as soon as I can, and then we can just like sort of chat, because you may have things you want to talk about, and you might not want to hear these things. So we can talk about things you want to talk about, which is fine with me.
On doit faire ça vite, il faut avoir quitté à 10h, je pense qu'on va terminer, fait qu'on pourrait discuter après, il y a sûrement des choses avec lesquelles vous n'êtes pas d'accord ou qui vous intéressent.
Okay. Let me just say a couple of things, because people always ask me why I left PETA, because I worked very closely with PETA from 1982 until about 93, 95, I don't know, somewhere in the early 90s. And I think PETA is probably, and again, I don't dislike the PETA people, and it's not that I think that they're bad people or that they don't care about animals. I just think they're doing it all wrong, and I think in many ways their efforts are counterproductive. Although there were many reasons why I decided to stop working with PETA. I never worked for PETA, and I want to make it clear, I've never had a job in the animal rights movement. I've always been a professor, and I contributed my time to the movement. But the reason why I left working with PETA was a sexism. I'd rather go naked than wear fur campaign, which has gotten a whole lot worse. I mean, it's that in many ways was nothing compared to what they do now. But because I really believe, there were other reasons as well, but that was a major reason, was that PETA has obsessed about, many of PETA's campaigns are very, very sexist. And what PETA has done is associate the animal rights movement with these sexist stunts, these sexist media stunts. And I really think this is a bad idea. And PETA is now a $60 million a year organization. And yet they're killing healthy animals, which was another issue we had back then, another problem that Ingrid and I had back then, was PETA had animals. PETA would take in animals, and they would kill them, healthy animals, and they would kill them. And PETA's still doing that. PETA has a facility now where they're bringing, they're collecting stray animals, and people are dropping animals off, and they kill them. Again, I think this is partly because they accept Singer's view that as long as you kill an animal painlessly, you're not really doing anything morally wrong. I happen to think that's nonsense, and I disagree with that. I mean, yes, if I'm going to kill you, it would be better if I waited until you went to sleep and then snuck up on you and put a bullet in your head. You would never know what hit you. But it still would be wrong. And so I think that, the PETA, we had this problem in 1994. It's come up again now, and everyone's all shocked that PETA's killing healthy animals. Let me tell you, it's been going on for a long time.
Plusieurs personnes demandent souvent à Gary pourquoi il a arrêté de travailler en collaboration avec les gens qui ont de PETA, disons. Il était quand même très, très près d'eux pour une dizaine d'années, entre le début des années 80 et le début des années 90. Ce qui a fait en sorte qu'il m'a critiqué beaucoup les décisions qui étaient prises dans le groupe. Bien qu'il n'ait jamais travaillé, il n'a jamais été un salarié de PETA, c'est toujours du temps qu'il donnait de manière volontaire, je voulais le mentionner quand même. C'est parce que c'est quand PETA a commencé à faire le choix de bâtir des campagnes sexistes. Je préfère être nu que porter de la fourrure, je ne sais pas si... Bon. Ces campagnes-là qui sont ultra sexistes et qui, à l'époque, en fait, n'étaient même pas... étaient loin d'être comparables à celles qui sont super sexistes maintenant. Puis, un autre aspect aussi du problème, c'est que PETA va accueillir les animaux errants, puis il va les tuer. Puis, pour Gary, c'est pas parce que... bien sûr, c'est pire si les animaux souffrent, mais il ne considère pas que ça nous autorise moralement à mettre fin à leur jour. Puis, donc, ça pose un problème moral, le fait qu'il y a énormément d'animaux qui sont tués, malgré le fait qu'ils ont beaucoup d'argent chaque année.
So, there were a number of issues that caused me to sort of move away from them, and the killing of the animals was one, but the sexism was another thing, and that leads into my final point. I do remember what my fourth point was. It came back to me. And my fourth point was about the importance of understanding how this is all part of a larger social issue. Our world is in very big trouble. Things are getting worse. They are not getting better. If you had told me 20 years ago that, or if you had told me 25 years ago, or actually 30 years ago when I was a law student, if you had told me one day there's going to be something like Guantanamo Bay that your country is going to support, and that people are going to be imprisoned there without trial, without legal assistance, that they're going to be tortured, I would have said, you're crazy. But it's happening. Things are very, very bad, people. The world is in very big trouble. There's much more violence and not less violence. Things are getting much, much worse. And it is important that we understand that that what we are, or at least from my perspective, what we are about is a movement against violence. We are the new peace movement. And it's important that we see that that has now fallen upon us. And that we are the new peace movement. And that we need to take that seriously. We need to understand what our obligations are in that respect. We need to see that what we are about is a movement that rejects violence, opposes speciesism, but also opposes racism, sexism, heterosexism, that basically, and I'm not saying we have to all we all have to be part of every single social movement. You know, we can't do anything else in our lives except go from one social movement to another. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that our movement ought to have as its baseline principles no racism, no sexism, no heterosexism, no violence. For us all to become educators, we need to all train ourselves to be teachers and to understand the basic, you know, I'm not saying that we all have to be philosophers or we all have to be this, that, but you know what, the basic stuff that you need to learn to talk to people is not all that complicated. The basic philosophy you need, I mean, the stuff that you need to know about health issues or environmental issues or human rights issues, these are things that you can learn. And you know, with actually not a lot of time. But we need to educate ourselves so that we can educate others. Education is the most important thing. We need a revolution, but not a violent revolution. They generally don't work, and I'm opposed to that sort of thing. What we need is a revolution of the heart. And what we need to do is to get people to look at things differently. We need to sort of shift, and I believe it can be done. Yes, there are a lot of jerks in the world that you're never going to change. There are a lot of people in the world that you're never going to get to. But there's a lot of people you could get to. You know?
Il faut donc s'éduquer nous-mêmes à devenir des éducateurs. C'est très important d'essayer de s'informer le plus possible, sans devenir nécessairement des philosophes, comprendre avoir toutes les données en tête, mais il suffit d'avoir quand même une idée des principaux arguments, puis parler aux gens, informer les gens, éduquer donc à propos de la nécessité de l'abolition et du véganisme. En fait, concluait en disant que il faut former le mouvement, on vise une révolution, mais une révolution qui est absolument non violente, parce qu'elle ne fonctionne jamais, c'est non violente. Ça prend une révolution du cœur, que même s'il y a certaines catégories évidemment de gens qui vont demeurer indifférents, on n'est pas tous sympathiques, mais avec de l'information et de l'éducation, il y a quand même énormément de gens qu'on peut influencer, puis qu'on peut changer, arriver à changer de paradigme par rapport aux animaux complètement.
I'm going to finish up by saying we all have many, many opportunities to educate because we all have people we're interacting with every day. And, you know, you should look at every person you meet as an opportunity. This is yet another opportunity to sort of get someone and get them to see the world in a different way. And it's a challenge, but you can do it. And if you feel it, you can do it. And you know, I was flying over here. And you know, I never fly on airplanes. I always get vegan meals, right? It always happens. The person sitting next to me says, "Why are you eating that? Is that for health reasons?" And I say, "Oh no, it's because I don't eat animals." "You don't eat any animal products?" "No, I don't eat any animal products." "Are you a vegan?" "Well, I think it's pronounced vegan." And I say, "Yes, I'm a vegan." And I explain this. And, you know, when you're flying from New York to Paris, you got 7 hours, you know, to have the discussion with somebody. And, you know, so whether you're sitting on an airplane or whether I'm in a grocery store, you know, I don't like to wear T-shirts with slogans on them necessarily, but sometimes I do when I go grocery shopping because it always gets somebody to ask me, "What does that mean? What does your shirt mean?" And I say, explain. And so we need to become educators, and we can become educators. And it's an exciting thing to do, and it's activism. That's what activism is.
C'est ça d'avoir compris, parce que c'est des gros endroits. En fait, il faut voir à peu près tout le monde, chaque personne, chaque situation de la vie comme une opportunité pour informer, pour éduquer. Donner l'exemple de, bon, là, il vient de New York en avion, puis il commande un repas vegan dans l'avion. Bon, la personne à côté d'elle est captive pour 7 heures. C'est sûr qu'il va passer un commentaire sur son repas. Voilà une occasion. Il va dans une épicerie, je peux porter un chandail avec un message parlant du véganisme, il peut toujours avoir quelqu'un qui vient m'accrocher ou qui me pose la question en attendant en ligne. Toutes les occasions sont bonnes pour parler de cette question-là et que, en fait, c'est ça l'action la plus importante. Si on veut être activiste par rapport au respect, c'est la meilleure façon de le faire.
I have a website that is translated into French, and it actually the whole site is translated into French, and then parts of it, the movies, we have little flash movies about theory of animal rights and animal rights versus animal welfare and animals property that are translated into German, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and will be translated into Greek and Japanese soon. It really makes it look like I know a lot of languages. I don't know any. I have people who help me. She does the French site. But it's at www.abolitionistapproach.com. And Natalie can, I guess, give you the site. And so you can get French material, because we've got quite a bit of stuff on there that you can use to sort of educate yourself about the issues. It's really not hard. You know, it's basically learning some concepts, so you're able to talk to people, so that when somebody says to you, well, you know, why isn't it all right to eat animals? They're different from us, and you can have the discussion. Well, in what ways are they different? And you know, why don't we think it's all right, for example, to use people who are severely mentally challenged as experimental animals, and yet we think it's all right to use animals and non-human animals, and you know, you could learn the arguments. They're not that difficult, and you need to educate yourself. And as I say, our site's available. I try to respond to emails. You know, you can write to me whenever you want. I try. I get lots and lots of emails, and you know, sometimes I just get overwhelmed with them. But I try my very, very best to respond to them. You can even write in French, because my partner, my life partner Anna, speaks French fluently. So when people write to me in French, I don't understand what they're asking me. So she comes over and reads them. So you can write in French if it's better for you. And I'll try to respond to you in French, you know.
Il a bâti un site, ça fait pas tellement longtemps, c'est assez récent. Nathalie va vous donner l'adresse, je pense, c'est Abolitionist Approach, mais il traduit donc en français complètement. Puis il y a des parties qui sont même traduites en allemand, en espagnol, en portugais, et bientôt en japonais, puis en anglais. Et sur le site, donc, il y a une partie, la partie informative, il y a une partie, c'est des messages blog, en fait. Puis dans les messages comme ça, souvent, il va discuter des situations où il y a eu des interactions avec des gens, puis qu'il a essayé de leur parler donc, de la question. Ça peut être inspirant parce que ça donne des idées sur comment interagir, parce qu'on est souvent à court d'idées quand on se fait poser des questions étranges. Mais ça peut donc aider, puis essayer le plus possible de lui écrire. Vous pouvez lui écrire même en français parce que sa partenaire parle français. Vous pouvez lui écrire des messages, des fois il y en a trop pour il n'arrive pas à suivre, mais généralement il essaie de répondre le plus autant possible. J'aime pas pour lui écrire aussi, je pense aussi.
I want to thank you again for having me, and you know, it was really nice when I came here tonight. I was talking with Natalie, and she was explaining to me that she works with Food Not Bombs, and that's an organization that I support in the United States, although sometimes it's not always vegan, but you know, some of them are, and those are the ones I try to support, and it's really great. This is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Social activism, you can't look at it in compartments. You know, it's all part of the same thing. You know, and there's a lot of bad stuff going on. You know, women are being exploited, children are being exploited, non-human animals are being exploited. And it's all part of the same rot, part of the same cancer. And it's important that we sort of see it for what it is, and recognize, you know, we can do something. We can do something And you know, we can change things, but we've got to want to, and we've got to have a clear vision about what that change is. And one of the things I think is really important is to understand that it's not a question of humane exploitation, just like it's not a question of humane rape. You know, it's a question of justice, and it's a question of fundamental justice, and it's a question of non-species justice, and that means the end of it all. And I would like to take your questions if you have any.
Vous remercier en commençant en remerciant et en revenant un petit peu là, sur le fait qu'il y a évidemment il y a du sexisme, il y a de la discrimination envers intelligents, que c'est évidemment très intimement lié et qu'il faut donc avoir les idées claires et être capable du mieux possible d'éduquer.
Et que en fait, il prenait l'exemple de Food at Home.
Oui, c'est ça.
Le repas ce soir.
Précisément.
Et que c'est quelque chose d'excellent qui réunit toutes ces causes. C'est ça.
Oui. Et que, en tout cas, du moins, quand les partis, ceux qui sont végans, qui font ça, qui sont végans, ils les appuient aux États-Unis, puis on sent que c'est très, très inspirant, très bonne façon de faire. Et que si ça vous tente de discuter,
si vous avez des questions, allez-y.
Est-ce que vous pensez que les insectes ont un intérêt?
No. Oh, what did you say?
Do you think insects have an interest in food?
I don't know. You know, I don't know whether insects are sentient. It's funny because earlier tonight, when Valéry was translating something, I saw an ant walking over here. And I was thinking, are these people going to think I'm totally nuts if I get a piece of paper and pick the ant up, get the ant outside? And I decided I was going to do it even if you thought I was nuts, because if you do, you do. But when I looked down again, the ant was gone. And so I don't kill insects. And I don't know whether they're sentient or not. I do know that fish, chicken, pigs, cows, you know, all birds and all mammals and all aquatic things that we eat, they're all sentient. That I know. I don't know about insects. I err in favor of not killing them. Just like I don't know clams, mollusks, you know, clams. I don't know whether clams are sentient. I don't eat them because they may be. In insects, I don't know. I don't kill them. I don't walk on grass because I'm afraid I'm going to kill insects. Not because, you know, people say, well, what about plants? The plants have it, you know. And I, you know, I mean, if I had 5 cents for every time someone's asked me the plant question, I could now be retired. But I don't walk on grass because I worry about killing insects. But I don't know whether they're sentient. I just don't know.
Do you drive car?
Yeah, I do, and I'm sure I kill insects when I drive the car. But you take public transportation. I mean, you know, it doesn't really matter whether you drive a car, whether you take public transportation, whether you fly in a plane, whether you take a train, whether you know, I mean, it's unavoidable. I mean, it's unavoidable. If you walk, I mean, if you never take any public transportation and you simply walk, you are killing insects. So it's I don't know. But go ahead.
Je sais pas si tout le monde a compris, c'est qu'il ne sait pas en fait si les insectes sont sensibles, évidemment. On ne peut pas en être sûr, il y a des études contradictoires, mais évidemment, il faut, je pense, par principe de précaution, pour faire attention pour ne pas en tuer pour rien. Puis si on peut, il donnait l'exemple d'une fourmi qui avait aperçu tantôt pour se demander si vous alliez tous se retrouver fous s'ils se ramassaient pour la sortir, mais on va faire le temps d'y réfléchir, puis finalement elle était partie, mais en général il va tuer les insectes, il va éviter de marcher dans le gazon pour en tuer au cas où il le serait, mais que
oui, qu'en fait, il sait pour sûr que les vaches, les cochons, les poulets, eux, ils sont sensibles, ils ressentent et ils ne veulent pas mourir, donc déjà, ils ne mangent pas, ils n'utilisent pas. Maintenant, il va faire de son mieux pour ne pas tuer un insecte, mais il ne va pas non plus faire un cas de conscience s'il part inadvertance, il va écraser une fourmi ou un autre insecte.
Oui, c'est ça, c'est pas parce qu'on n'est pas certain de la situation des insectes que ça nous justifie, évidemment, pour ceux auxquels on est certain de les exploiter. Do you mind if I add something, though? Because
Sure.
Because you were saying that the conference, I think it's important. Il y a aussi un autre argument qui peut être utile, je pense, par rapport à cette question-là. Une autre idée qui peut être utile, c'est que quand on consomme des animaux, on finit par tuer beaucoup plus d'insectes en général, parce que on sait qu'au niveau de l'agriculture, pour nourrir un animal d'élevage, ça prend à peu près 10 fois plus de plantes que ce que ça prendrait si on les mangeait directement. Donc en partant, dès qu'on fait de l'élevage, on va, par le biais de l'agriculture, tuer infiniment plus d'insectes. C'est pas le même type d'argument, c'est pas le même type de logique, mais c'est quelqu'un qui se soucierait du sort des insectes, de toute façon, éviterait le plus possible de manger aussi, de manger des animaux, de manger les animaux que l'on trouve, que l'on sait sensibles. The fact that in agriculture we kill much more insects anyways if we feed animals to eat them than if we just eat the plant directly.
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible to, one of the arguments that's made is people always say to me, well, you can't avoid killing insects, so therefore why care about anything? And the answer is, well, I mean, that's like saying you can't live a perfect life, so screw it, let's not do anything. And that just doesn't sort of resonate with me, But I understand, it's a troubling issue. I don't know. I mean, I remember when my first job out of law school, I was clerking for a federal judge in New Orleans, Louisiana, and they have cockroaches. I don't know what you call them. What would you call them? Yeah. These damn things, you could ride them to work. They were huge. They were big. They're big, and they would they'd were all over the place, and they'd be crawling on the ceiling. And I remember we were in bed, and one fell on the bed, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It was just like, and I was terrified of them because they're big. I mean, they're big, and I learned to sort of catch them in a little glass and put them outside. And I now live in the country, and sometimes my dogs bring snakes in and stuff, and they're alive. And, you have snakes in the house, and, you sort of get over it, and you sort of learn that you put your glove on, you pick up the snake, you bring the snake outside, you don't freak out, so I don't kill anything, and I always try to catch everything and put them outside. But, do I kill insects when I drive a car? Yeah. When I take a bus, when I take a subway, I'm sure we've been going all around Paris on subways. I'm sure those subways kill things when there are rodents down there that I would guess get killed. There are certainly insects down there that get killed probably by the trillions by those subways. So, it's not good.
The difference is the subway, people take it anywhere. So people take these trains every day anywhere. Yeah. You take your car and drive.
I do my best. I always try to take public transportation wherever and whenever I can. But I agree. It's not a perfect situation, and it's not a perfect situation.
And don't you think your thought is inspired by the concept of ahimsa?
Of
ahimsa. Ahimsa is the.
Can you spell that word?
Ahimsa, A-H-I.
Oh, ahimsa! Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes.
Est-ce qu'il pense que son reste ahimsa.
De Gandhi, Gandhi.
Ahimsa, you know, A-H-I-M-S-A.
Bah c'est Gandhi, hein.
En fait, Gandhi l'a popularisé en Occident, mais ça remonte à l'hindouisme et dans les Upanishads. Et ensuite, le jainisme en a fait son concept central, donc il y a vers moins 600 avant Jésus-Christ. Et je crois que...
Mais c'est quoi l'idée exactement en fait?
L'ahimsa, c'est la non-violence envers tout être multicellulaire ou, disons, sensible.
Même végétal.
Les jaïnistes ne mangent pas certaines racines parce qu'ils pensent que dans les arrachant du sol, ils tuent les insectes.
Parce qu'un jour, j'ai lu qu'il y avait deux façons d'éplucher une carotte. Alors, de haut en bas, on la fait moins souffrir que de bas en haut. Ça fait rigoler, mais non. C'est n'empêche que j'ai trouvé ça intéressant.
The concept of ahimsa or non-violence, where I certainly have been influenced by it. Where I disagree with it is, for example, in Jainism. In Jainism, some Jains are vegan, and some of the younger Jains now are trying to move Jainism towards veganism. But Jainism, as a general matter, has not been vegan. Jains eat dairy products. On the other hand, Jains also think that plants have senses, and I don't. I mean, I have a problem with that. So yes, as a general matter, the concept of ahimsa, or not doing harm, is an important concept to me. As it is to anyone who has ever embraced, or who, any person who has ever embraced nonviolence has either read or has been part of a tradition where ahimsa has been taken very, is a central concept. But that is not to say that I think the instantiation of ahimsa in Jainism or Hinduism is entirely consistent with what it says it is. So, but yeah.
C'est qu'il a été influencé par le concept, bien sûr, qu'il y a encore l'idée de ne pas causer de tort, mais qu'il y a certains, comment on dit en français, jainistes. Mais les gens qui adhèrent au jainisme sont des jainistes. Jainistes. Donc, il y a certains jainistes qui ne sont pas végans. À ce moment-là, évidemment, il n'est pas. Semble-t-il qu'ils consommeraient des produits laitiers. Je ne suis pas d'accord, mais.
J'ai pas connaissance de ça.
Okay, bon,
pour moi, ils ne mangent pas de produits laitiers, ni d'œufs, ni de miel.
Non, c'est pas vrai, parce qu'il y a des. En fait, ils sont censés être frutariens. Mais il y a certains frutariens qui, en fait, considèrent que le lait ou l'œuf est le fruit de l'animal. Parce que l'animal est comme une plante et il donne des fruits.
Bon, en fait, à ce moment-là, si c'était le cas, évidemment, il n'est pas d'accord. Je pense que le véganisme est absolument essentiel.
Je voudrais savoir ce qu'il pense du régime de Nathalie, justement, au niveau de la souffrance végétale, puisqu'elle ne mange pas racines, tiges, feuilles, et elle mange que la pulpe des fruits, quoi. Je voudrais savoir ce qu'il en pense. Nathalie.
Avec le régime.
Ils ont profité de ton absence.
Il a posé la question, je voudrais savoir ce que Gary pense de ta diète qui consiste à ne pas manger certaines choses parce que tu considères la souffrance des fruits.
Non, pas des fruits.
Des végétaux.
Ah, des végétaux. Oui, parce qu'en fait, en fait, je veux pas. J'applique ce que j'applique pour les humains et les non-humains, je l'applique aux plantes. Okay. Un maximum. I apply what I apply to humans and non-humans. I apply it to plants because I consider that. Well, in the first phase, I didn't know, just like in insects, I didn't know if plants suffer or not. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to stop eating and using plants because just in case, I don't want to kill them.
Right.
And okay, if I get sick and definitely need to eat plants again, then I will, which happened. So I add plants again, and then I gave another try, and now it's been like 4 years that I haven't eaten plants.
But do you only eat food that's fallen?
I can't, because I'm living in a city. If I was living in the jungle...
But you're still picking things that are alive.
Of course, and I'm still... No, because fruits are not... Well, they are alive,
sure,
but they are not sentient.
Well, how do you know that... I mean, how do you know that a peach that's on the tree is any less or more sentient?
Because it's like the placenta of an animal. It's like to feed the seed.
Well, I know, but it's still... But you still don't know. I mean, I don't have any problem. I mean, I don't. You know, with all respect, I don't have any problem with plants. I have to say, I don't have any problem with plants. I'll rip a plant apart with my teeth and enjoy it. Because I don't think it's not. I don't think there really can be any more. I don't think there can really be an empirical question about whether they're sentient because they have no nervous systems. They well.
They have a brain. Did you read The Secret Life of Plants? Oh my God!
The Secret Life of Plants, Natalie. The secret.
For animals, non-human animals, we use words to talk about their feet, their hands, different from the words to describe, you know, the human body. And for plants, it's exactly the same thing.
What do you mean?
Just like, you know, when people date and the guy is supposed to bring flowers to the girl.
The flowers bring flowers to the flowers.
No, it's just like he brings genitals to the girl because the flower is the thing that is made to attract insects to come and pollinate and make babies.
So, but let me ask you. When we came in, so basically, you don't see any difference between the fact that I was eating cucumbers and the fact that I was eating chicken?
No, cucumber is a fruit. Because you can take it away.
There were no vegetables on that table?
Oh, yes, there were many. But
would you, and you weren't...
This is...
But wait a minute, if you think that the vegetables on the table are sentient, then why didn't we have chicken? I wouldn't have eaten, I'm just saying, why didn't... I mean, what's the difference between having vegetables there and having chicken there? Gotcha.
I would say, no, the thing is, I can cook vegetables for other people.
But would you cook chicken for other people?
I wouldn't.
Why? If they're all sentient. But if they're all sentient, why?
I know, because I don't go that far. I can't make this. I mean, this is, I wouldn't buy any vegetable to cook it for anybody. But I can what people trash and throw away, I can take it and cook it.
This was stuff that people threw away?
Yeah.
Am I poisoned?
I haven't cooked for myself for about 8 years now. But when I visit my mother and she wants vegan food, then I will cook vegan vegetables and food. Mostly fruit, especially if I have to buy them. But I will cook for her. I won't for myself because I do that because I respect the environment and I find it better for the earth not to cook at all. But for other people, I will.
Okay. With all respect, I understand what you're doing because I don't really see any reason to believe that plants are sentient any more than I have a reason to believe. I mean, there are theoretical physicists who will tell me the reason why this cup stays together is because atoms have intention and they wish to be bound in this way. And you know, I understand that people have different views on these things. I mean, look, as far as I see sentience as a means to the end of survival, and I do not understand why plants would evolve sentience because they can't escape noxious stimuli the way a sentient being can. I mean, you take a cigarette lighter, you put it to the chicken runs away. You take a cigarette lighter, you put it to the plant stands there and burns. Nevertheless, it doesn't escape. It doesn't. It
comes because they are rooted.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, why would evolution? Why would plants evolve a sentience if they can't do anything about it?
They can do something, just like.
Well, they can't protect. They can't stop. They can't protect themselves in the sense that if a chicken has a place to run, the chicken will get away from the noxious stimuli. The plant is rooted and can't do anything. So if I go up to the plant and step on the plant is just going to get crushed. And what I'm suggesting is, it's not a question of the plant has a little fence around it, and the plant can't go anywhere. The plant can't go anywhere because that's the nature of the plant. I don't know. I mean, I with respect to The Secret Life of Plants, I actually own that book. I actually one of the few people you'll ever meet on the universe who has a hardcover copy of The Secret Life of Plants, and it's a wild book. And it was.
It's the second hand.
Yes, it is a second hand.
I'm not sure it's recycled.
It's a second-hand book. I bought it some years ago, and it's a real trip to read. And it's and I have no doubt that plants react to sunlight, and that plants move, and that plants do all sorts of things. But just like you can put an electrical impulse through a wire and the bell goes off, or if you shine light on an amoeba, the amoeba reacts. But I don't think that we were having this discussion on Monday. Somebody was saying, well, how do you know bacterium, that you have on your face or your hands, you crush your hand, I've just killed a bunch of bacteria. How do I know they're not sentient? And the answer is, well, we don't know anything 100%, but we've got some good reason to believe that certain things are the case. I mean, it is possible that there are atoms that have intention. I mean, it's theoretically possible that atoms have intention that keep this cup together because they wish to be together. It is, in my judgment, it is unlikely. If we might at some point discover that plants are sentient, but as far as we know, they do not have central nervous systems. I know. You disagree. They don't have
central nervous system.
They don't have central nervous systems. They don't have brains. They don't have benzodiazepine receptors. They don't have all of the indicia that we associate with sentience. So I mean, I think we have to be. I also think we have to be very, very careful about this, because I understand when I'm dealing with a bunch of people like you, that you have. These are legitimate things that you think about, and we're having a discussion and we're talking about it. The problem is that omnivores are always using that argument and saying, well, plants might be sentient, so I'm going to eat chicken. And so we've got to be careful. I mean, as a practical matter, whenever the plant issue comes up, I always say, look, plants aren't sentient. There's no reason to believe that there are. And when somebody says to me, well, they might be. And I say, yeah, and I might go to sleep tomorrow and wake up with a third arm. Anything is logically possible, but that doesn't mean it's likely. And I think we've got to be careful about it, because it is an argument that is used a lot by omnis. And by omnis, I mean basically anybody who ain't a vegan, because I don't really see the difference between somebody who doesn't eat flesh but eats dairy and somebody who eats flesh and dairy. Some people, so you have a lot of vegetarians who eat more dairy than many omnis do. So like, what the hell difference does it make? So it's an argument that omnis make all the time. I think we have to be very, very careful, because once we as vegans start saying, well, plants might be sentient, we're handing them the argument that they're always using for not being vegan. Okay? But
moi, j'ai rien compris. Non, mais c'est bien si que par lesquels on vite,
c'est qu'en fait,
Nathalie un petit peu, mais
c'est qu'en fait le problème, c'est que l'argument selon lequel les légumes aussi peuvent souffrir, malheureusement, c'est un truc qui est beaucoup organisé, qui est beaucoup utilisé par les omnivores ou les gens qui simplement veulent pas devenir végétariens ou même, enfin, surtout véganes, pour dire ouais, mais voilà, les végétaux et les fruits, les légumes, ça souffre aussi. Donc, ouais, quoi.
Si du coup il l'accepte, il est obligé d'accepter le poulet.
Ouais, voilà. C'est-à-dire qu'il fait pas de différence fondamentale. alors qu'il y a quand même une différence fondamentale.
C'est ça, c'est que dans le fond, tout ce qu'on sait à propos de la sensibilité, même s'il y a encore beaucoup de découvertes qu'on espère à ce niveau-là, il y a à peu près tout, selon Gary, a démontré que les plantes n'ont pas de système nerveux central, il y a certaines hormones, les indices qu'on a jusqu'à présent, on a toutes les raisons de croire qu'elles ne sont pas sensibles, bien que, évidemment, c'est théoriquement possible qu'elles le soient. Mais il donne l'exemple du verre qui pourrait, à la limite, on pourrait considérer que les atomes, à un niveau physique, certains pourraient argumenter que les atomes ont l'intention, on a quelque chose comme des intentions de rester ensemble, qui fait en sorte que le verre se tient. Donc, on peut argumenter de cette manière-là, mais c'est très dangereux, comme disait monsieur, parce que c'est un argument qui vise en fait à justifier le fait de ne pas être végan souvent. Bon, puisqu'on ne peut pas respecter tous les êtres sensibles, vous voyez, les plantes le sont possiblement, alors ne faisons rien. Respectons personne.
Oui, mais... C'est quand même bizarre qu'un arbre, ça ressemble à un neurone, quoi.
Ça ressemble à?
A tree looks like a neuron.
Yes, and a galaxy too. And every skin everywhere you can find things exactly the same.
Je voudrais lui demander s'il connaît l'orchide des marteaux. L'orchide des marteaux, c'est une fleur qui reproduit l'odeur et la forme d'un bourdon femelle. C'est une plante qui reproduit l'odeur et la forme pour attirer les insectes et les pollutions.
Elle est maligne, je sais pas.
Sur son pétale, il a reproduit la forme et l'odeur d'un insecte. Traduire ça.
Was able to reproduce the smell and the form of an insect.
Yeah, look, although I am an American, I still believe in the theory of evolution, and I don't dispute. Do you know that 25% of the people in the United States who hold PhD degrees have doubts about the theory of evolution? Not counting it is remarkable to me. But 80% of the American population believes in the devil. Believes that there is this thing with horns and a tail that runs around. But even though I'm an American, I believe in the theory of evolution. And I have no doubt that plants have evolved all sorts of things through natural selection. But that doesn't mean the plant has any sort of mind, or that the plant is sentient, or that the plant is an individual who cares about what happens to it. Whereas I think that is the case with fish, with squid, with chickens, with pigs, with lambs, with cows. I mean, these are like us. They are someone. There is someone there. I don't know that we can say that about plants. I have no doubt plants have, you have a Venus flytrap plant that has developed sensation on some level so that when the fly lands, the trap closes. So plants do all sorts of interesting things. And that it doesn't surprise me that over millions of years, they would have, through the principle of natural selection, developed all sorts of interesting things. But that doesn't mean that there is some individual there. Go ahead.
Oui, en fait, c'est évident que même si c'est un Américain, il croit à la théorie de l'évolution, puis que donc il peut très bien comprendre que par le principe de la sélection naturelle, les plantes ont développé un paquet de façons d'être efficaces pour se multiplier, si on veut. Mais que ça ne signifie pas nécessairement que les plantes soient des sujets, qu'ils aient une subjectivité, que leur vie puisse être améliorée ou détériorée d'un point de vue subjectif, comme individu, en fait. Puis c'est là un petit peu que la sensibilité ou la sentience prend son sens, en fait. C'est la possession d'intérêts personnels ou individuels. Puis les plantes, même, on a du mal même à les individuer certaines fois, mais c'est plus difficile d'imaginer qu'elles sont qu'il y a quelqu'un devant nous quand c'est une plante qui ont des esprits.
Dans la forêt vierge, c'est la guerre pour la lumière, chacun se bat, c'est des coups de branches.
Oui, mais il faut faire attention aussi à l'utilisation du langage de manière un petit peu imagée ou métaphorique. On peut dire aussi que...
Si on accélère, parce que les végétaux, ça va tout doucement. Si on accélère des films, tout d'un coup, ça prend une autre dimension.
On peut aussi dire qu'une voiture a besoin d'huile ou vous voudrez avoir de l'huile. On utilise le langage de ces manières-là, mais ça ne signifie pas nécessairement que c'est le même type de volonté, de désir ou de besoin.
Il faut pas oublier qu'on vient des végétaux aussi. À la base, on est...
Ouais, mais d'accord,
En fait, tout est possible. Il n'y a pas que ce soit une possibilité théorique. Sa crainte, c'est que cet argument-là serve disons, à justifier un petit peu n'importe quelle forme d'exploitation, parce qu'on considère à partir de là que ça devient impossible.
Ah ouais, moi j'ai travaillé dans des fermes organiques, là. Tu vois les poireaux, ils sont alignés comme à l'armée, là. Les patates, pareil, ils sont arrachés, traités, la terre, elle est labourée. Enfin, c'est pas évident à gérer aussi ce qu'on mange tous les jours, même en végétaux. Bon, déjà en bio, s'il n'y a pas de produits qui massacrent les petits insectes, déjà bon, ça c'est déjà pas mal. Mais après, c'est quand même une organisation avec le tracteur, avec le machin. Je veux dire, ce qu'on mange tous les jours, même si on est végétarien. C'est pour ça que Nathalie m'en fascine complètement, parce qu'au moins elle ne participe pas à une exploitation à laquelle j'ai participé. Hein, j'ai fait des fermes bio et compagnie, et voilà, je peux lui travailler.
Let me ask you a question. Would you be here tonight? Would you be here tonight? Don't ask you a question. Would you be here tonight if there was steak on that table?
Est-ce que tu serais là ce soir s'il y avait un steak sur la table?
Oui ou non? Oui. Monsieur, oui ou non?
J'en mangerai pas, mais
You wouldn't eat it.
je vois pas cette question.
So you see no difference between the steak and the aubergine or whatever is over there?
Vous voyez pas de différence entre un steak et une aubergine?
Or whatever's over.
Pour moi, oui.
Sur le plan moral, évidemment, j'imagine que vous pouvez distinguer, mais...
Non, c'est mon légume préféré, alors.
What's his favorite vegetable?
It's my best vegetable, aubergine.
And you don't think aubergines are sentient?
I like very much, but in
are aubergines sentient?
When I see the aubergine line and the exploitation in an organic farm, for me it's shocking.
Mais ne pensez-vous pas que c'est une image plutôt c'est métaphorique ou esthétique, si on veut?
Moi, je me suis fait exploiter, si tu veux, dans des fermes, dans les circuits organiques. Moi-même, j'ai été exploité. Donc moi-même, déjà, j'ai subi l'exploitation humaine, on va dire, mais je participais complètement à l'exploitation de cette terre et de ces végétaux, alignés, arrachés, avec aussi mis dans des sacs plastiques, sous vide, des épinards. J'ai vécu des trucs qui m'ont fait vraiment réfléchir sur justement qu'est-ce que je peux manger, quoi. Parce que même ces trucs-là, si tu veux, ça ne correspondait pas du tout à mon éthique.
Même l'agriculture bio, elle est intensive. Pas une agriculture maraîchère. Ouais, non, mais petite agriculture maraîchère.
Je sais que la question de si les végétaux ont une sentience et tout soit un argument qui est utilisé contre les végans, le véganisme, ne justifie pas le fait qu'on ne se le pose pas. Bien au contraire, à mon avis, on devrait avoir une réponse plus valable parce que, je sais pas, mais logiquement, je trouve que ceux qui répondent face à ça, c'est vraiment l'équivalent des arguments que les autres peuvent utiliser contre le véganisme. Parce que bon, le verre contenant le vin, etc. Non, mais je pense qu'il y a quand même une différence entre la vie et la matière non inanimée. Donc, c'est pas comparable avec la différence qu'il peut y avoir entre les plantes et les animaux parce que c'est la vie quand même. Après, parce que, qu'est-ce qu'il dit pour les insectes? Il dit que je ne sais pas, donc je me méfie.
C'est ça, il a évoqué sa propre limite, sa limite de sentience. Pour lui, et au niveau des insectes, lui, il ne sait pas. Pour Nathalie, la limite est un peu plus loin. Mais on est toujours dans le domaine où on ne sait pas. Après, on peut aller plus loin dans la matière ou d'autres choses.
I agree, and my answer is there is no reason to believe plants are sentient. There is no empirical evidence to believe that plants are sentient.
She sees a big difference between what is alive and what is not.
Well, but to be alive does not mean to be sentient. So if you're saying that everything which is alive is sentient, I don't think there's any reason to believe that.
You said that la survie est une finalité en soi, il le dit.
Bah pour l'individu, pour chaque individu.
No. What I said was sentience is a means to staying alive.
Yes, and staying alive.
And sentience is a characteristic that certain organisms have evolved that allow them to stay alive. And those are organisms that use perceptual awareness and sensation to escape noxious stimuli, which plants don't do. So when I say that again, I'll repeat it. Sentience is a means to staying alive. It is a characteristic. It is a characteristic that some organisms, human and non-human animals, perhaps insects, have evolved in order to stay alive. And sentience is the ability to take signals from the environment and withdraw, escape from noxious stimuli that are harmful to existence. And just because something is alive doesn't mean that it's sentient. And so I wasn't saying that at all, and if you understood that, I apologize. It was probably her translation. It's her fault, and it's her fault. It's her fault. No, it's her fault. In all seriousness, to say that something is sentient is to mean that it wants to stay alive. To say that something's alive does not mean it's necessarily sentient. It may or it may not be sentient. And I don't think that there's any empirical evidence to suggest that plants are sentient any more than there's empirical evidence that says this cup is what it is because the atoms have intention to stay together in this particular configuration. I mean, is it theoretically possible? Yes. Is it theoretically possible plants are sentient? Yes. It is theoretically possible that I will have 4 legs tomorrow morning. But it is not likely, and there is no empirical evidence to suggest that plants are sentient. And so therefore, I don't find it useful, and again, I don't mean to say that in a negative way, I don't find it useful to engage in logical possibilities, because anything is logically possible. Anything is logically possible. And so, to sort of say, well, is it possible that, is it possible this cup is really sentient because the atoms have intention? Is it possible, all those sorts of things are possible. What I worry about is the fact that I know that the animals that we're exploiting every day by the billions are sentient. And as far as the insects are concerned, I always say, well, look, I don't know whether insects are sentient. I don't kill them. I think insects are a hard case. I think they're a hard case. I don't know what the hell to do about that. I don't know and I tell people that. I tell them. Whereas with plants, I don't worry about that. I think the plant issue is hypothetical in the same way the cup issue and intentionality of atoms is hypothetical. Whereas the insect issue, I think, is tougher. So I err in favor, as I said. I don't kill them intentionally. I watch where I walk. I don't walk on grass. I don't use these sprays and stuff like that. And I live in the country. Let me tell you something. I got major bugs in the house. I got things that they're hairy and they're large and these are like not little things. And I used to live in New York City. I don't anymore because of the dogs. We couldn't have that many dogs in New York City. It was becoming a problem. But with the insects, tough question. But I always tell people, look, I don't know whether insects are sentient, but I know that chicken you're about to eat, or I know that fish you're about to eat, they're sentient. What the hell are you doing? Why are you doing that, if you care?
Non, je suis tout à fait d'accord quand il répond comme ça, je suis tout à fait d'accord. Mais quand on essaie d'argumenter, on ne sait pas plus pour les plantes que pour le verre, etc., je trouve que c'est exactement la transposition des arguments. Donc quand on dit bon, je m'arrête à cette limite-là parce que je sais, donc ça me suffit pour faire une action. Oui, d'accord. Mais après, quand on rentre dans les arguments logiques, je trouve que c'est pas...
Il va être 10 heures et j'aimerais bien poser une question avant.
Ouais, si on peut
Avant qu'on
ressortir.
débat, j'aimerais bien qu'on revienne au débat de ce soir sur les animaux. Donc,
je vais vous traduire quand même
après.
après.
Après, mais j'aimerais bien que, parce que justement, je voudrais voir avec tout le monde et avec monsieur, puisque moi je suis venue écouter monsieur, j'ai su ça hier soir, donc je le connaissais pas. J'ai donc un peu vu son blog et moi je fais tout ce qu'il fait, donc moi je trouve pas plutôt ridicule quand il veut pas écraser un insecte parce que moi je fais la même chose, je les mets dans des enveloppes et je les emmène dehors, donc je suis exactement pareil. Et moi j'ai un combat, donc moi je mène ce combat tous les jours, moi je porte pas de laine, je porte pas de soie, je porte rien. Et je mène ce combat avec les gens parce que les gens n'ont aucune réflexion, n'ont aucune sensibilité, aucune moralité, donc on en est à un point dans la société où quand on fait ça, on passe pour un imbécile, un ridicule, un marginal. Et le problème, c'est que c'est toujours le plus grand nombre qui fait la loi, et malheureusement, le plus grand nombre, c'est l'autre côté. Donc, ce que je voulais vous demander, c'est concrètement, quelle est l'action à mener pour... Alors, il a parlé d'un parti politique, si j'ai bien compris. D'un parti, oui, mais de faire
un mouvement, pas un parti politique.
Ouais, d'accord, un mouvement, mais il faut que ce soit un mouvement citoyen. Donc un mouvement où les gens s'engagent citoyennement, parce que le problème en France, et comme partout ailleurs, c'est le bulletin de vote qui pèse. Le bulletin de vote où les...
Il se base sur les changements individuels. Plus il y aura de personnes qui changeront...
De toute façon, on ne sera jamais la majorité à penser ça. Donc après, il faut que ce soit une...
Well, you know, what you...
Donc concrètement, quelle est l'action?
There are many things, beaucoup de choses, that you can do. Picking up little words of French here and there, I'm getting dangerous. There are things that you can do, what I generally tend to do, I mean, not all the time, because it depends. I mean, if I'm giving a lecture at the university, it's different from this sort of talk or or what I do on the street with people. What I tend to do is, I tend to focus on the fact that most people I meet have had dogs or cats or rabbits or some animal that's been part of their life that they've really loved, that has been a person, a non-human person to them. And what I always ask them is, okay, you had a dog, or you have a dog, or you had a cat, or you have a cat, or whatever, rabbit, whatever. And you recognize that was somebody you loved. And that somebody was meaningful to you, and you realize that was a non-human person. Don't eat all those brownies, save some of those brownies. And why is it that we love some animals we stick a fork in and we eat? And I have started conversations like that with probably thousands of people, in my life. And it's amazing how you can sort of get into the issue with them by focusing on the animals that they've related to in their lives, and how there really is no difference between the animals they love and the animals that they treat as commodities, and that there's a moral schizophrenia that just doesn't make any sense. And people really do respond to that argument, but there are lots of things we can do.
En fait, l'activisme, comme un peu l'avait expliqué dans la présentation, c'est vraiment d'éduquer une personne à la fois. C'est ça le mouvement politique qu'il veut créer. Puis, une des façons qu'ils utilisent souvent, c'est quand ils rencontrent quelqu'un, c'est de passer par leur animal, je sais pas si vous avez compris, leur animal de compagnie, puis par le lien entre l'animal de compagnie qu'ils aiment et qu'ils considèrent comme étant une personne avec l'animal qu'ils utilisent pour le lait ou pour la viande. Puis généralement, ça fonctionne assez bien quand même. Les gens sont quand même.
Justement, ma question, c'est est-ce que c'est de le faire au niveau du simple particulier, chacun dans son environnement, ou est-ce que c'est de créer quelque chose d'officiel, un mouvement officiel, non?
Selon ce que je vais en fait, Gary, she's asking, is it to do it on a one-by-one way, or to create a more political organization?
Well, because, what we're trying to do is to educate people. And, you know, I always encourage people to try, for example, to give lectures at local grammar schools or lycée or, you know, or college, you know, you know, I mean, there are all sorts of opportunities. Obviously, you want to try to reach as many people as you can. But also in your day-to-day life, the one-on-one interaction is not to be discounted, because I talk to you, you talk to her, she talks to her, she talks to her. You know, I mean, and it's you know, they talk. I mean, these things have a way of spreading, and so yes, it's great. You know, to talk to large groups. And, you know, every year I teach a course in human rights and non-human rights at the universities, one of the courses I teach. And I give lectures at universities, and you know, I do radio shows or television shows, and it's great to be able to reach large numbers of people. But I also think that the one-on-one is very, very important, because when you have the opportunity to have an exchange with an individual and answer his or her questions, you know, and deal with where he or she's at in terms of what their particular issues are, you can really, really get to somebody in a matter of 10, 15, 20 minutes. And you can get that person thinking. And then that person says, gee, you know, never thought about it that way. Go ahead, say that, and then I want to talk about an example.
Peut-être pour les autres, c'est que les deux, en fait, c'est bien si on peut s'adresser à des groupes plus larges, comme ils donnent un cours, par exemple, à l'université sur le rapport entre droits humains et droits des non-humains. C'est fantastique si on peut s'adresser à tout le monde à la fois, mais le contact de un à un est très, très important aussi, parce que c'est étonnant à quel point on peut, à ce moment-là, répondre aux questions, puis vérifier où en est la personne par rapport à ces questions-là, et l'amener à réfléchir à la question animale de manière un peu plus
sérieuse. Alors là, qu'est-ce qu'il nous conseille? Nous, on prétend beaucoup de ça, de toute façon, à mon avis, tout le monde le fait dans sa vie tous les jours. Mais est-ce qu'il nous conseille justement de former quelque chose d'officiel, un groupe, quelque chose pour agir à l'écrit?
Well, I think it's important, you know, I mean, I think there are some groups here in France. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been corresponding with Mark by email for a while, but this is the first time we've met. Mark, do you have a group of people who are involved in vegan education?
Not yet mine, but it's a beginning. I try to get some people to make some street action.
Maybe you should turn the camera around so that you can see yourself.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to sort of at least, you know, formal organizations with structures and presidents and directors and all that sort of nonsense, I don't think you need. I think that they're unnecessary. But I think it's good to have a group of people who work on some literature and produce some simple pamphlets, simple stuff, nothing complicated, simple information give to people about why they should eat meat. Or, you know, I mean, or why they shouldn't wear animal products. Because fur is no different from leather, it's no different from wool, it's all the same. We shouldn't be making distinctions, you know, anti-fur. We shouldn't be sort of suggesting to people that some forms of exploitation are worse than other forms of exploitation. We should basically be taking the position it's all bad. And so, you know, I just think it's important. You know, should you form an organization? Yes and no. You should be working with other people. And producing literature, getting out there and educating. You know, one thing that would be great to do, I was talking about this with Mark before, is when there are festivals or things in Paris, because there are lots of little outside things that are going on. And when there are markets, marché, have a stand set up where you're passing out vegan food. Try to get money. So, you know, if you're going to collect money for something, collect money so that you can have a vegan food stall at a marché or a fair. What's the word for a festival? Right? Festival.
I don't know.
Festival. What's the word for festival?
Festival.
You know, and be passing out vegan food like the food you had here tonight. You know, I mean, some of that stuff I would never have believed was vegan if somebody didn't tell me. Somebody I trusted, Natalie, told me it was vegan. I was eating that cake and I said, "Is this vegan?" And she said, "Of course it's vegan." I said, "This is delicious." I mean, I think vegan food is delicious, but I have to tell you, that cake was awesome. And have that sort of thing like the cake. And the various soups that you can make, and the other sorts of wonderful foods that you can make. Pass those things out so that people can see vegan food is delicious.
That's a big argument.
I'm sorry?
That's a big argument.
Strong argument to give vegan food. But maybe you want to say that about big organization, the danger of getting too big too, is when you want to, let's say, to get money and the danger of being tempted to become more welfare.
Yes, there is a problem with big organizations.
There is a problem with small organizations too.
Well,
you have many little groups with people crossing over the groups, but not only one group, efficient group.
Well, listen, the problem though with having one group, it's a nice idea in theory, but what happens is you have one group. I mean, I'm not looking, if you can make this work in a sort of a semi-anarchical way, I mean, that's great. The problem is when you build big groups, and they start bringing in lots of money, they start getting very welfare. That's the problem.
Not in France. Forget about the money in France. They will never get any money.
No, of course they will. Don't say that. Don't say that. There's money out there. There's a lot. This is a wealthy country, and there's money out there. It's just
wealthy because they consume dairy and meat.
No.
But many things you said are very different in France. You know, you can argue as long as you want with French people. They can agree with you. They say, "Okay, you're right," and then they'll keep on eating meat. They will agree with you.
You don't think
my whole family agrees with me, but they're still eating meat.
That happens in the United States too, and I'm telling you something. Since she translated my website, since she translated the website, and it's now out there, and French people are getting it, I am getting probably 30 to 40 emails a week from people in France, which is driving me crazy because I don't read French, so I'm getting all these emails. I have no idea what the hell anyone's talking about. But I'm getting a lot of emails, which when Anna or Valerie translate them, basically people are saying, hey, this is really interesting. I've never thought about it this way. And this is really interesting. I've had people from France. I have had people from France who read my website asked me if they can contribute to my organization. I said, I don't have an organization. I don't want an organization. I don't want your money. I would like to be able to redirect those people to people who are working here in grassroots organizations in France. And it's really important. I mean, this is a wealthy country. There's a lot of smart people here. Le Monde Diplomatique has published several. They've published several things that I have written. They're starting to get interested in the animal issue now. There are a lot of very bright people in France and a lot of very wealthy people in France, and there are a lot of regular middle-class people in France who, when they are confronted with this idea, will start thinking about it. It's just you haven't had a tradition of that here yet, and what you've got right now is something
together for one group, and maybe in 5 years they will divide the group they have to become different groups. That's something we don't have. Just one group. Many different groups, but never one. If you ask me about groups that people in France can just call, can just join to have some information in France, to join for activism or anything, I can tell them about maybe 10 groups, 10 interesting groups, depend on what is their own interest. Maybe they want to go against hunt, against meat, against different things. There is no vegan, the strictly vegan movement.
Well, let's start one.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
I cook for them. I cook. My only work for veganism is to cook. I cook and show you can eat something good.
Very good.
I didn't cook tonight. Just one cake, which is good. But the other thing I didn't. I cook too much, so I'm bored with cooking. But that's my job. I help all of them.
I think we'll have to talk each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. I think we have to go. Thanks very much. It's been wonderful meeting you. I wish you well, and I hope to see you again.